Hey there, strategic authorpreneurs. I'm Crystal Hunt.
And I'm Michela Mitrani. We are here to help you save time, money, and energy as you level up your writing career.
All right, on today's podcast, it is a little bonus holiday episode, and we are not doing a formal interview. We don't have a whole whack of content planned for you. You've got enough on your plate over the next couple of weeks in planning for next year and having your holiday in whatever format that is. And so we are going to do a little catch up, the equivalent of a holiday party, and just, basically let you know where we're at, talk about some of the exciting things to come in 2021. I don't know about you, Michele, but I am excited to see the back of 2020. There have been some fun things and some not so fun things and quite a mixture of stuff going on. I am curious, what have you been up to since our last episode? It's been a couple of weeks, so how have you been doing?
Many things. And just to attach myself to what you said about 2020, there are not so good things, but also very good things. I count them as one of them. The sub episode and sub podcast was live, so there are things that balance out. So you have balance, good things, bad things. I think it's part of the deal of life, if you will. If you allow me to be a bit philosophical. But just in the past couple of weeks, actually a lot happened. I was trying, and I actually succeed in publishing 3 things in a matter of weeks. The last thing that I published was Bringer of Fire, which is the second mythological fantasy after Soul of Stone. And it went actually better than I expected, so that got me fired up. I also know that you did something on a way bigger scale, and I would like to know maybe a bit more about that, because you are very happy, and I think you should share that happiness with the other people that are listening to us. And then I've been also doing some pre-planning for 2021, both in my Italian front and the English front. It's always beautiful to have 2 different paths, and so that basically means double the effort, double the things that you need to do, but also double the excitement. So I'm double excited to record this episode, because I can get to talk to you a bit about that. And also I wanted to show you what I've been basically doing in the last couple of weeks. This is the cover of Bringer of Fire on my cell phone. And I'm kind of proud of it. I'm actually very proud of it, because Crystal helped me, made that happen, and she was one of the first people seeing it. And I don't know, I see and I feel this book to be like the cherry on a very big cake. We spoke about good things of 2020, and I think the amount of words that I was able to put in the paper and actually to release as stories was unprecedented. I've never did something like that before. And that cover reminds me just that the cherry on the cake has been put, and now I get to eat it. So if you're interested in any ways in mythological fantasy, which is a super niche kind of stuff, but that I'm enjoying writing, and I've been enjoying writing for the past 2020, you can check it. As you know, I'm not very good at self-promoting, but we're going to put the link somewhere on the website. Now, I want to know what Crystal Hunt has been up to. She's been doing several different things, and 2 weeks are a very, very long span of time for us to know what happened in your world. So take it from me.
All right. Well, I have been up to all of the things. This is one of my favorite times of year, and it always feels like the energy is kind of in renewal mode. There's a lot of wrapping up of things. I usually get a big burst of motivation where I just want to finish all the old projects and start shiny and new in January. And there's today is the solstice when we're recording this. So happy solstice, which is one of my favorite holidays in the year. And I also love the break time that happens over the Christmas vacation and my birthday comes really soon after that. And I usually do my kind of annual planning somewhere between December 15th and January 18th. And then I set my big personal and writing goals that start on my birthday. So usually mid-January is when I switch gears and start fresh with stuff. So part of the wrapping up is that Eileen Cook and I have been writing a book called Full-Time Author, which is one of the Creative Academy guides for writers. And it is basically a career Bible in the sense that it started as kind of an overview of how you could build a successful writing career that you loved over time, something that was sustainable and you could really keep going. And it's a mesh of traditional and indie stuff so that you can mix up those elements whatever way you want. And it got big. It turned into a big project, which makes sense because your career is a big deal and there's so many different things to consider. And so we really wanted it to be a one-stop shop for all of that kind of information. So something that you could use to coach you through making an original business plan, and then something you might come back to year after year as part of your planning process, and something that has a section on what you do when things go wrong that you can kind of consult when stuff goes awry along the way, as it inevitably will. And so one of the things that goes with that book is, for myself, it started off as a single spreadsheet for tracking goals and accomplishments and all of that. And what it turned into was basically a business management system in spreadsheet format. And it is now this Uber resource with all these different tabs that help you plan your production stuff and track your words and do your marketing things and do the business management stuff, keep track of your products and assets, kind of all in one place. Because I realized as I was doing my planning, I am making the shift to full-time author, and I'm shifting from a business focus on nonfiction books for the last 2 years as we were writing and growing our nonfiction guide series. I'm switching back to my fiction, which I've been sadly ignoring for the last year and a half or so as we went all in on the nonfiction. So it's a huge kind of career reboot for me. And I'm hoping to, take the level I've built to and level up with a nice layer of the nonfiction stuff on top of that. So to that end, I've been working on my own business plan for 2021, including kind of revamping and re-releasing some of my older titles that need to be available in some new formats now. So some of the kids' book stuff, some of the nonfiction things that I did way back when, and also doing that with my fiction. So because a lot of my stuff is holiday based, a lot of my River's End romances are Christmas romances or holiday romances or New Year's, like that time of year, that this is kind of my big push time. So I organized a bunch of promos. I had a free Booksy run today, actually, and it's always fun to just keep an eye on things and inject a little bit of life back into that. And for me, this is the time of year when things creep up on the charts and I have a little bit of fun seeing the results of the hard work from the year before tend to kind of collide in one piece. So I have been having a blast today just watching the numbers tick up on the dashboard and the page reads and the sales and all of those things. My holiday season tends to fund a large part of my growth for the coming year. So it has been nice to revitalize all of that with a bit of attention and energy. And I'm really looking forward to switching gears in the new year. Now, part of the process of planning for next year is reflecting back a little bit on this year. So one of the things we wanted to dive into for today was just a little bit of a discussion about what are some of our highlights from 2020 that we want to acknowledge, celebrate. Celebration is a big thing for us, and just make sure that we are very aware of the things we did accomplish in this past year before we go leaping ahead to what we're going to tackle next year. So, Michele, what are some of your most proud accomplishments this year, both in the writing and the podcast side of things? You can include that as well.
I think one of the most important things is that we started this podcast basically not really knowing each other. We knew some things and we felt that we were professional enough to hold a conversation between each other, but I didn't really know who Krista Hunt was. I think at the end of this year, I know you just a bit better. I know just some inside stories that make me like more comfortable in knowing or in believing to know that I know more of the person behind the screen, because we've been watching each other through the screen a lot, thanks to 2020. And so I think the confidence that comes with that, right? So before you're like, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to play out. I'm not even sure if I'm going to like that person, or if this kind of appointment is going to be consistent, if everything is going to fall apart. I think we should stop 1 second and acknowledge that me and you work together and we did it consistently. And this is now, let's say, episode 42, even though it's not really an episode in the year, but it is an accomplishment. And it's also, I think, we explored each other a bit better. And again, it was just an amazing, awesome opportunity to, build a friendship. Let's call it like that. So the podcast, I think every single episode that we recorded was more professional and more in depth, and I think more valuable because of this relationship that blossomed, both professionally, but I think also personally. So if you guys see us and you see like her smiling and I don't know, saying some inside joke and stuff, we mean it. Like, it's not like fake. And that's one of the biggest reason why we wanted you to see all the in between quotes, like fucked up, that we did at the end of the each episode. It's because it's real, and it's because that's part of who we are. And when we refer with some kind of a love to the title of the podcast as sappy, it's again, as we said, it's because there is that sapness component in the podcast. So I think that's number one, the starting of a friendship, but that also made this podcast more three-dimensional. So not something that you will see and it's like septic and stuff. There is our personality, there is our work, this is our job. So we had fun making something professional. That's basically what I'm hinting at. And the second thing is, I think it worked both for you, Krista, and for me. It's accountability. So having to each and every week, or most of the week anyways of the year, to be confront to the camera and to report our achievements and stuff, did something to our brains. And let us acknowledge, okay, that was 1 week ago. I need to present something else this week because that was the past, and we don't want to be chained to the past too much. So it was like a path that led to our growth. And today we're going to talk about what kind of we have in mind for the next season. But I think all of that came out as the beginning of the journey. We had no idea where we were going. Now with 41 episodes plus this under our belt, we actually know a bit more of the nature of the podcast itself, and we know a lot more about ourselves as Authorpreneur, which was the most important thing that I think we could achieve in this year. It's to explore ourselves through the feedback that we got also by our audience, but also through the feedback we got from our guests. We invited so many people. We learned so many things. So I think this is the second most important takeaways from this podcast, is learning also how this podcast changed us and made ourselves a bit more accountable. And I think the third equally important thing in this top three, if you want, is that aside of consistency and the fact that we explore and we learn ourselves a bit better, we also saw on the horizon like that light and say that these things that we are building, it's actually possible and can be doubled, made 3 times as much, 4 times as much in the future. And you can't do that if you don't have a beginning. I loved one of the sentences that Sam Weeby, one of the guests that we had, said about writing, and I think it can kind of summarize everything we did in the podcast this year, but also a part of what we did in our author life. And he said, You don't know how to write an ending until you write an ending. And I think you can apply that sentence to so many different things. You don't know how to publish a podcast until you don't publish a podcast. You don't know how to start an entrepreneur career until you don't start that entrepreneur career. So I think the third point that I wanted to underline is the mindset. This podcast, in a way or another, changed our mindset, both mine and I'm sure also Crystal. But I also want to know if Crystal has 3 or more points that she wants to bounce off you guys. And what do you think, like this 2020 SAP podcast and also your author life brought to you?
Well, I think highlighting each other's accomplishments when we forget to say them is important and something that we do very well. And I'm going to bounce back to you before we move on because you did not talk about your 12 by 20 challenge at all. So I'm just going to throw that spotlight right back on you until you talk about that.
Yeah, one of the things I did not learn in 2020 is to acknowledge a bit more of what I was able to do. So when today I mentioned the bringer of fire, I actually had to force myself to do it because part of my mind was like, this is advertisement, bad thing, not bad, it's good. But yeah, this is important. This is actually a challenge that back in January, in one of our coaching session, I was talking to Chris, and I was like, this might sound crazy, but I like just this feeling that I would be a better author by the end of 2020 if somehow I can write a story every month this year. And by story, I meant flash fiction, because I completely couldn't fathom the idea of writing something longer than that. So a few hundred words, but consistently doing it. And to be honest, I think from what I thought might have been something that I would not have been able to achieve, sprouted a lot of possibilities. And so my 12 by 20 challenge, which was just to write a story, doesn't matter the length, once every single month, sprouted into the beginning of my new authorpreneur journey, because now 3 of those stories are published and I actually made money out of them. So that was not planned. That was not part of the picture. That was not what I wanted to do. But that showed me that when I shut up and I started sitting and writing, the word just flew. And I was able to write more than 12 stories now. And most of them are actually kind of long works that I can use as product and sell to the public. So I think it's good that Crystal reminded me to mention this challenge. It's because I've never done something like that. Crystal did had her version of a challenge, although it was 40 things by her 40th birthday. And I actually didn't really know that challenge until she told me. And I found it weird and at the same time interesting that we had a similar idea. That speaks volume on the kind of mindset we both have. I think it's very similar on that regard. We are very good when we are challenged, better when we're challenged by ourselves. Because if you ask Crystal, ask her to do anything and she will shut down, will not do that. Ask her if she knows that homework and stuff. That's one of the inside story that I learned. You can say anything to her, like for example, do your homework, and at that moment she will stop and not do any homework. But if you give her a challenge, or if you give her a partner and you say, okay, now I'm accountable, and then she will write the heck out of anything she needs to write. And I think the book you mentioned, Crystal, Full-Time Author, it's a proof of that. If you didn't do that, and then you would have Eileen basically whipping and chasing you, but you knew you didn't need that kind of accountability because your mindset is framed in that way. And so you wrote way more than you expected. So that book was supposed to be like 30,000 words, 40,000 words. I'm not going to say how many words it is, but I've read it in 5 days because it was very good. It was awesome, but it's not 30,000 words. It's way more. So I thank you, Krista, for giving me back the word. And I do appreciate the fact that I could tell you that was a good opportunity, the 12 by 20 challenge, for me to really level up. And I think it reminds us that the moment in which we put the writing to our priority, we really can make stuff happen. So that was it for me. Hopefully I didn't forget anything important, and I pass the ball back to you.
Yeah, one of my favorite things from this year has actually been watching. If you're on YouTube, you can see there's a little board in the background, a cork board behind Michele, and there's a colored post-it note for each of the stories as it goes up, and then different colors as they're published in different languages. And so it is a really cool visual progress tracker. And I've been having a great time this year watching new things appear on that board, and also being able to celebrate as shiny, fun, exciting things happen. And it is more fun to share accomplishments with friends and to have somebody who cheers you on and is excited when cool things happen. So I am definitely uh, very proud of all the progress you have made this year. And it is really, really cool to see all that hard work starting to pay off, and the leveling up of the covers, and the totally digging into the mailing list, and embracing the patterns and habits of sitting down daily and committing that time, and the sacrifices we make and the changes we make to our daily lives in order to go after a dream that we have. I think it's really inspirational for people to see that as much as it is to be living inside of it. So it is really, really fun. That has been one of my highlights this year, is watching all that progress take place. So, there you go. There's my proud mom moment. And I really do love the sort of mutual challenge, but not in like a competitive way, just in terms of seeing what's possible and then figuring out how to adapt that. And yes, my rebel personality definitely gets in the way. If other people challenge me to stuff or tell me I have to do a thing, my instant reaction is, you can't make me do that. So there's an interesting combination of sort of internal motivation and also the accountability that comes from publicly committing to your own goals, and having other people be able to kind of hold you accountable to that. So definitely excited about where that's going to go. I was not sure at the start of this podcast if I was going to be able to pull off doing anything every week. Aside from my office hours in the Creative Academy, there's nothing I do with this much regularity. So I'm usually all over the map, and my schedule is constantly changing and flexing. And, my calendar is a living, breathing thing on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis. So it has been an interesting adventure to show up every single week and commit this time, and to see how people responded, and, what is of interest to other people. And I think just helping us clarify our thoughts in different areas. There's nothing that gets you to a place of focused clarity and forces you to research and learn and make sure information's up to date more than actually sharing or teaching it does. And so for me, my big accomplishments this year, I realized that um, I think 50 different master classes over the course of 2020, different workshops for different organizations online, conferences that I presented at, and then masterclass workshops that I did inside the Creative Academy. So that is a huge amount of knowledge to take out of my brain and put into packaged format. And then each of our podcast episodes was in its own way kind of another one of those. So that is almost over 100 hours of recorded knowledge download. So that feels very, very good. And especially in the midst of sort of the chaos of what was 2020, nothing really looked the way we thought it was going to this year. So that has been an interesting adventure of just maintaining balance in the middle of all that. And I think the other thing I'm really excited about is having fully made the commitment to shifting my life in the direction of full-time creative, giving up my consulting company, which has been kind of a cornerstone of my identity. I'm a health psychologist by background, and I really enjoyed my work. It was super creative. It's a combination of communication stuff and creativity and business and technology. And I mean, that's my happy place. But, one of the books I was reading this year, and I cannot for the life of me remember which one because I read all the things behind me on the shelf, was to not get trapped in your zone of excellence. Like, I think we get really good at something and we're very qualified in that area and we get comfortable and we love like knowing the answer to any question people can ask us about that. So for me, I have been firmly swimming in my zone of excellence for the last year. I mean, after 15 years in the indie publishing world and working with all of this stuff, I do feel confident, but it's time to push a little further and see if I can't break those boundaries in another area. So for me, I'm totally fired up about that. I did manage to publish one and almost two. It'll be the second nonfiction book in the past year. So that's exciting. And I am really looking forward to some of the stuff we're going to tackle next year. And I guess we can ease into what we're going to switch up next year. And one of the things is that we're actually going to change our format a little bit in the podcast. So we're always on at our audience and ourselves to check the data and check ourselves and see what's fun and exciting. We're going to have some shifts and some changes in the new year, and we are totally committed to still bringing you weekly episodes for most of the year, although we are going to be very balanced writerly folk, and we are booking in little breaks in between each kind of mini season of the podcast for next year. And that also gives you a chance to catch up on any episodes you missed in between. So that will be a nice format to experiment with and will give us the time and space to make sure that we are still moving our own launches forward and doing all that stuff. And I think there's another exciting shift and change in format. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Michele?
So there are a number of things that are going to be different. One of the things that gets us a bit more excited is that the format of the podcast is going to slightly change. Up to now, you've seen on YouTube our lovely faces. And we decided that we wanted to shift from video a bit more on the audio side. So we're going to make content that is a bit more focused on subject that we know you guys are going to be very benefiting from. So if you're not seeing our face anymore, that's a strategic choice. And we did that because we wanted to make the format as much as possible more enjoyable and easy for you to listen to and to absorb. Now, the YouTube channel is still going to be live and alive, but we're just focusing so much more on the content itself and in providing as much value as we can. One of the new things that we're also going to do is some report on our publishing world, so that we can get you to get a bit more excited about our journey. And I think that's very important for us, because like transparency has always been something that we were big at. And I think like sharing that path with you, I think makes you also part of our journey a bit more. And as always, we are super excited to know what you think about that. So if you have questions, concerns, you can still comment, you can still send us emails. Every single feedback we got, even feedback that comes from the dreaded curious jar, all this question and stuff, we implemented that, use it. You will be surprised of the amount of time I think about the curious jar questions, and there are some that were pretty profound and informed me on the way I want to talk also to you. So I think these are things that get me a lot of excitement inside me, get me excited. But there are also other things that we're going to slightly up level, if you wish. And I want Crystal to be the harbinger of those updates.
All right. So one of the things, by moving to an all audio format, one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is because it lets us throw all of our energy into the quality of the audio production on the technical side as well, which means we aren't balancing what makes for a good background versus what would be the best sound quality. And we have a few fun little new tools in our toolbox that we get to engage for future episodes. So I'm really excited to hear from all of you once the first episode of 2020 does, or whoa, wait, once the first episode of 2021 goes live. No time travel, no Groundhog Day. We are going forward. Once that episode goes live, I want to hear what you think of the new audio quality. We have a few fun tricks to try. So we're pretty excited about rolling that out. And I think the progress reports, what I'm really excited about there is the fact that I think there's so much focus right now on like six-figure author and making all the money. And yes, we want this to be a smart author business. And yes, it's amazing when you get to that stage of being a six-figure author, but that's not the goal of everybody. Some people just want to make a comfortable living, and it doesn't have to be six figures necessarily. And I think the other piece is that a lot of times when you're talking to authors at those later stages of their careers, when everything is super established and, they've got it all figured out, that can be very inspirational, but it does leave you with gaps. And I think before we've talked about the draw the rest of the fucking owl problem on the podcast, which is basically, how do you draw an owl? Well, you draw an oval for the body and a circle for the head, and then you draw the rest of the fucking owl. And I feel like a lot of those six-figure author focus are super interesting and helpful, and you can learn bits and pieces of things. But how do you get through the first few stages, right? How do you go from 0 to 3 figures or 4 figures or 5 figures? And there's a lot of levels before you hit that last one. So for us, I think sharing some of what's going on in the back end as we level up to those 4 and 5 figure areas for ourselves, we can give you glimpses at a couple different stages of author development and give you some hints and some peeks into the data of what that looks like. And as we focus in on up-leveling areas of our own author businesses, you will get the ideas of what did we do, what worked, what didn't work, what worked, because we have different genres and we write at different lengths and we write in really different ways. And we're going to try some wide publishing this year for both of us. So that's going to be a whole nother interesting adventure, being able to compare some data from wide and exclusive as well. So that will be really fun to dig into those different things. So I'm super stoked about the progress report side of things. And the other thing we're going to up level is the website. So one of my plans for 2020, which got tossed in the dumpster fire of whatever was going on, was to actually be sharing some of my knowledge in the form of articles and things. And so we have a blog that's built into the back end of the Strategic Authorpreneur website, which has not been active. And we are going to hit the activate button on that and also do a bit of a site redesign to help you find the most up-to-date content the easiest and to make sure it's all fun to look at and interact with. And we have a whole bunch of resources coming your way as well to support some of that stuff. And so we are, over the next few weeks, doing a complete redesign to go with our relaunch. So podcast all the time is going to be fantastic. We are really looking forward to 2021's production schedule. We booked our first 6 months of times and got it into our calendars, and we, I think, are both very excited to see what year 2 brings to us. Now, one thing I hope we don't have to lose, because I love it, even though it makes my co-host cringe whenever I pop it up on the screen, is our curious jar, because I think the random questions are part of what have made it so interesting to get to know each other. And what is interesting is how often the questions are totally appropriate for whatever we were talking about that day. You can see they're all different. Woo, they fall out. Each one is a different color. And I'm going to pick one, Michaela, because we need to wrap 2020 with a question from the curious jar. Tell me when to stop.
Keep going, keep going. I want to see you really mixing this last time. I want to give it all the love that you can. Yeah, big smile. And now you can stop.
Okay. It is a blue one. Okay, interesting. What is a historical time you would want to spend a day in? And how about a year? So, what time in history would you like to spend a day or a year in?
Wow, that's interesting. 1 day and 1 year, right? Okay. Okay. So probably 1 day, um, the Roman Empire. I want to be in Rome and spend 1 day there and see, because that's basically where my whole culture and heritage come from. And although we have history and we have books, I was always fascinated by that time period. This second close, um, if I didn't choose like the Roman Empire, would be probably ancient Greek, maybe Athens or Thebes or maybe Sparta. I just went to Rome because I'm from Rome, and just I thought it might have been interesting in seeing the empire at its full, height, and that was basically the epicenter and the very superpower of the Western world at that time. And it seems that basically they had everything except for electricity. So they have way to pump water. They had they way to store food and stuff. I just found amazing that without the technology we have, they were able to build cities that contain tens of thousands of people. And I've always been an history geek, and but I don't say 1 year because I don't know if I would survive 1 year in that particular time period. What I would like, instead of spending 1 year in Rome, because I just want to be a tourist, a temporary tourist in Rome, just for a day to get a feeling of it. But regarding the 1 year living, probably it would be interesting for me to see. The only thing that comes to mind is like when the Englishmen settled in North America. How was it like to live the life of the settled, the person that really has completely nothing, and you have to invent everything out of zero? And then from out of that, they basically built the most powerful nation of our time. So the United States of America, Canada too. I think it would be very interesting because we had the same problem that they had. So starting from scratch and then building up a nation. And I don't know how a person would just do that. Really building from scratch a new nation, culture, heritage, everything like that. So probably I would be interested in spending 1 year like that, because I think if you know how to build a civilization from the ground up, you know how to build anything, from a story to an Excel spreadsheet, whatever. You know the starting point, and then you can make things happen. So probably that's the answer to that question. So what about you, Crystal?
For 1 day, I would like to go back to around 1866, which is when New Westminster was the capital of BC. But I think it would be really cool to see the city where I live now in its sort of historical element and see the translation of like what things looked like and how that's all changed. I think that would be a really cool day to just explore the neighborhood and see into the past of that. I think would be really really interesting. So that would be my 1 day choice. My 1 year choice, I would love to go back to like Jane Austen, England, and hang out in drawing rooms, go to a ball, like all of those things I think would be super fun. So, you know, that would be great. Of course, I would need to go back as a wealthy upper crust lady. I don't so much want to deal with all of the everyday stuff, but I think it would be a fascinating year to be kind of in society and see what that was like, as long as I could get the heck out at the end of that year. It's not a time I think I would have done necessarily very well in, but I think it would be a very interesting experience and would be really great for context of a lot of the books that I love are written during that period. It would just be fun to kind of see that world come to life and see what it was like to live there. Okay, so
now I would say, if you don't have anything else to say, Crystal, because if you do, please make sure you do.
No, I think all I want to say is like the next time we want to live in is 2021. We're going to spend a year there and it's going to be amazing. And you guys are going to join us and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. So this is your invitation. If you do find the podcast helpful, we have funded it, the production costs for this entire year from our own pockets because we felt very passionate about doing the project and experimenting with things and having some fun. That said, we do have a buy us a coffee button on the strategicauthorpreneur.com website. So if you have found our episodes helpful, if you are in a position where you are able to kick in a little bit towards our ongoing costs of hosting and transcription and all of those things, that would be amazing. And we would be grateful from the bottom of our hearts. We won't actually spend that money on coffee because neither of us drink coffee. It'll go towards podcast expenses and we will regroup. And we're really looking forward to seeing you on the other side in 2021.
Equally important, if you are not subscribed to our newsletter after so many episodes and so many sapping love that we gave you, please consider doing so. The address, you know it, is strategicauthorpreneur.com, but that's basically the best way for you to get in touch with the both of us. Again, I want to join Crystal in wishing a great 2021 to all of us. And it was really a fun ride, and you can see it from the happiness in our face. And I look forward, and I'm sure Crystal also look forward to see you next year. So until next year.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Talk about the turkey in the backpack. I'm gonna go there.
Okay.
You were like, just so you guys know, this is gonna be an episode of the Hook Records. We're gonna talk about turkey. We're gonna talk about backpack, snow, stuff like that.
Okay.
Nothing about self-publishing.
Okay. Our holiday eggnog edition of the podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
Don't want to shave off your hairs in the photo.
No, we don't.
This is my new bullet journal. I might show people that.
No,
I get a new one. It's the solstice today, so I get to start fresh. Oh, I gotta turn off the purifier here. One sec. It's loud. All right. How about now? Do we say enough dumb stuff? Can I hit stop now?
Yeah, you can hit stop. We